What's up everybody, welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony, let's jump in. Okay, happy Tuesday everybody, I hope you're all doing well. Let's just dive in. Yesterday, that is Monday, the ancient city famous for its terracotta warriors, Xi'an, underwent its 4th round of mass testing in just over a week. About 3,000 stations and more than 45,000 basic medical personnel were dispatched to the city to carry out testing on all residents. These 13 million residents still remain under strict lockdown, and the number of new cases each day continues to inch up. Authorities reported 162 new community infections on Monday, up from 158 on Sunday, with 10 of these cases coming from other regions in the country. There are now serious concerns for logistics chains and the general economy. For example, last Friday, BYD subsidy BYD Auto Co., China's largest electric vehicle makers, said it had to cut production to its plant in Xi'an due to lockdown measures. Another bigger example is the South Korean giant Samsung Electronics. Now, Samsung's largest memory chip complex in China, valued at over $26 billion US, is located in Xi'an. Samsung says there are currently no issues with production, with the South Korean media organization Yonhap News Agency reporting that the lockdown has not affected production as workers live on site in company dormitories. But if the situation worsened, it could be very disruptive indeed, as the 2 Samsung fabs in Xi'an account for 42.5% of the company's total NAND flash production capacity and a whopping 15.3% of the global total. Okay, let's turn back to the lockdown now. State media continues to trumpet the claimed superiority of the Chinese system at controlling outbreaks, confident that the current outbreak will not affect the Winter Olympics in February, with the Global Times writing today, quote, China's dynamic zero policy and previous experience in quelling domestic outbreaks will help curb the current epidemic, and the closed-loop management of the Beijing Olympics will ensure the safety of the sports event, end quote. Well, this remains to be seen, and we need to follow this current Xi'an and other outbreaks closely over the next few weeks. Currently, the Xi'an local government, is not taking any chances. Over 280 areas have been identified as high-risk, closed-off areas. In these areas, authorities have deployed 1 security personnel for every 10 residents. And in these areas, 2 residents are not allowed to leave their homes at all. In another 229 so-called controlled areas, only 1 person from each household is allowed to leave their homes every other day for a maximum of 2 hours to buy daily necessities only, and these rules are strictly enforced. On Monday, yesterday, state media reported that medical staff and other personnel from the People's Liberation Army have been mobilized to the city. China has seen several major breakthroughs in satellite technology this year. This week, the Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post had a great set of articles looking at Chinese satellite technology, particularly in the civilian sector. But of course, we know that advancements in the civilian sector almost always have military applications too. For example, recently researchers discussed a breakthrough with the so-called Beijing San, or Beijing 3, a small 1-ton commercial satellite launched by China back in June of this year, which performed an in-depth scan of the core area of the US San Francisco Bay. The South China Morning Post observed, quote, in just 42 seconds, a small Chinese satellite captured images of a large area around a US city that would be sharp enough to identify a military vehicle on the street and tell what type of weapon it might be carrying, says scientists reporting on the breakthrough, end quote. What makes this feat special, argue the project scientists, is that the high-quality image can be taken while the satellite rolls and moves with speed. Indeed, the satellite can take images while its body is twisting at up to 10 degrees per second. Project lead scientist Yang Fang expressed in an article published in China's domestic spacecraft engineering journal, quote, China started relatively late on agile satellite technology, but achieved a large number of breakthroughs in a short period of time. The level of our technology has reached a world-leading position, end quote. Another advantage with the technology from a military application perspective is that it is of a relatively low cost to produce. For example, the Worldview 4 satellite, which was launched in 2016, was built by Lockheed Martin for more than $800 million. The Beijing Sun, or the Beijing 3, is half the weight and could be as low as 1/3 the price to develop. The Beijing 3 also utilizes AI to independently plan flight schedules and boosts a response time that is 2 to 3 times faster than that of the Worldview 4, the most advanced Earth observation satellite developed by the United States. Again, according to the Chinese research team, these claims may need to be further scrutinized by international scientists, and real-world testing is required too. And while we're here on the subject of satellites, this month Beijing called on the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space to remind the United States to abide by its treaty obligations after space satellites launched by Elon Musk's SpaceX almost collided with its space station in both July and October this year. Then again today, Tuesday, the People's Republic of China Foreign Ministry expressed at a regular press conference that the US and Musk, quote, needed to act responsibly, end quote. SpaceX has already launched almost 1,900 satellites as part of its Starlink network. Media notes that some Chinese citizens online have lashed out against Elon Musk over the last few days. Commentators have pointed out that while the United States and its companies should indeed respect treaty obligations, it should be noted that China is also a major contributor to space debris issues itself. Yesterday we discussed the speed at which the People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN, is developing warships for domestic use as well as for export. For example, last Thursday, which we discussed yesterday, China finished 3 warships in one day. This week, in a relatively candid interview with state media, Zhou Bo, a retired People's Liberation Army senior colonel and a former director at the International Military Cooperation Office, spoke about PLAN plans for the next few years, and especially the important role of aircraft carriers. Quote, "The aircraft carrier itself is an open-sea combat platform. It is impossible for us to design or manufacture such a large aircraft carrier and just put it at home. Therefore, in the future, Chinese aircraft carriers will definitely appear on the high seas of the world. The training for our aircraft carriers in the Pacific Ocean is going further and further and has gone beyond the first island chain." End quote. Here referring to the string of islands from southern Japan stretching down to Taiwan of deep significance for naval powers operating in the Western Pacific. Yesterday we discussed a Pentagon report from last year warning US lawmakers that though the US Navy is still superior to the People's Liberation Army Navy, the Chinese now boast more combat ships than the US does. Last month, the Pentagon published a new report which claims that Chinese combat ships have jumped again to 355 vessels and that China is expected to expand the fleet to 420 ships in the next 4 years. And these are not just frigates. China has published a plan to build a real blue water navy with the objective to build at least 6 aircraft carrier battle groups by 2035. The critical question surrounds the quality of each of these battle groups. As we pointed out yesterday, one US supercarrier has more firepower than all of China's current conventional carriers combined. But closing this technology gap is a priority for Beijing. Now one may ask, why is China building up its naval capacity with such speed? Well, this is what the senior colonel's explanation was. Quote, "The reason we have so many warships, including the development of aircraft carriers, is that we are going to the ocean. This is related to our huge national interests and our international responsibilities as a major country." End quote. Perhaps anticipating a certain degree of skepticism from an international audience towards that answer, Zhou also went so far as to add that China only seeks peace, unlike the US, he argues, which only seeks dominance. Last up, let's cover the major economic and financial developments in the world's number 2 economy before moving on to Evergrande and the Chinese housing crisis. Quickly, if you're enjoying the episode, don't forget to hit the like button. It's the only way this video can be shown to new people. And if you're watching this for the first time, you're getting some value from the episode, maybe consider subscribing, hit that bell notification, and you'll have the most up-to-date analysis when I release these every day. Okay, let's move on. Yesterday, Monday, China's powerful National Development and Reform Commission and the Ministry of Commerce published a new negative list for foreign investment, which specifies the domestic businesses that foreign investors are restricted from entering. The list has opened up some sectors for foreign investment. The biggest news from this regulatory change is that Chinese authorities will allow full foreign ownership of passenger car manufacturing in the country beginning this Saturday, the 1st of January 2022. This is a big deal for auto manufacturers in Japan, Europe, and North America. Monday's release still included 31 areas in which foreign investment is banned or restricted, however, including rare earths and film production and distribution. In industries such as medical institutions, which is a huge and growing market, foreign entities must form joint ventures with local partners. In the past, these joint venture partnerships have been criticized for, among other things, engaging in forced technology transfers and IP abuses. Northeast China's Jilin province is making news domestically after it rolled out special loans to encourage couples to marry and have children. Unlike the wealthy eastern coast, this Rust Belt province has seen some of the most acute demographic collapse and very poor economic performance for years now. This month, the local government announced that Jilin province will support banks in providing up to 200,000 RMB, approximately $31,400 of, quote, marriage and birth consumer loans, end quote, to married couples. Many domestic commentators have rolled their eyes at the policy move as unproductive at best. Chinese financial media outlet Caixin Media reports today that, quote, China's cumulative annual renewable energy generation surpassed 1 trillion kilowatt hours for the first time, jumping by 1/3 over the same time last year as the country races to meet climate goals by 2030. End quote. At the same time, the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, the People's Bank of China, and other departments with the central government announced the launch of so-called climate financial pilot programs for local governments to, quote, facilitate investment and financing for climate-related projects and to encourage them to find their own ways to fight climate change and bankroll the nation's decarbonization drive, end quote. And while we're on energy, Caixin also reports that on Saturday it was announced that the state-owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission, the central government's state assets regulator, raised its stake in China Southern Power Grid Co. Limited from 26.4% to a controlling share of 51%. The move had to be okayed by China's State Council, China's cabinet, and it was said to be necessary to, quote, ensure the country's energy security, end quote. Okay, so where are we with Evergrande? On Tuesday morning, this morning, shares in Evergrande Group rose as much as 10% in Hong Kong after Evergrande made the announcement that, with local government support, it has resumed construction on nearly all of its housing projects. Now, we discussed this in detail yesterday, so if you haven't seen yesterday's episode, we have more details about that announcement over the weekend. However, the crisis-hit developers' dollar-denominated bonds continue to be traded at around 20 cents on the dollar, indicating that international debtors are still pessimistic about the company's ability to meet its long-term obligations. Today, Tuesday, China Evergrande Group has 2 more dollar bond coupon payments due. 2 major rating agencies have already formally described Evergrande as a defaulter after the company failed to make payments on several US dollar notes earlier this month, so it is unclear whether Evergrande will meet the payments due today. According to Bloomberg News, Evergrande, quote, has $50.4 million of interest due on a 7.5% 2023 bond and another $204.8 million tied to a 8.75% 2025 note. Evergrande has a 30-day grace period to deliver the payments before a default can be declared, according to a bond issue document seen by Bloomberg News. That would begin Wednesday if payment isn't made. End Quote. Meanwhile, the other developer that we've been following for the last few weeks is Shimao Group. In comments made to investors in a filing on yesterday, in Hong Kong, Shimao Group said that it plans to sell more commercial and hotel assets to make onshore bond payments due in the next 3 months. On the mainland, however, Shanghai Shimao expressed that its sales for the year are likely to come well under its target by billions of dollars. Hey guys, I'd love to hear what you thought about some of the updates we covered in today's episode, so throw your comments below. Always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.